I wasn't surprised terribly, but when it actually happened and you read the headline, it was definitely a gut punch, no matter what your thoughts are on Bishop Strickland.
The Catholic left has been so big on the importance of the laity, and yet the laity are offered no explanation for why. It sounds like a church that's saying, shut up, we're getting rid of this guy because we don't like him, and we're not even going to say it. It's scorched earth, smash mouth politics. You don't care what happens. All you care about is winning today. I do believe that our Heavenly Father is very patient, but after a while, he's going to say, I'm going to force you to put up or shut up. And the question facing the church right now is church teaching wrong and society right, or is it the other way around?
Do you want me to answer that?
Answer.
The church is right.
Bam!
Did I get it right?
Nailed it. Welcome back to the LOOPcast. Today, I'm joined by my co-hosts Erica and Josh, as always. And of course, we're going to be talking about Bishop Strickland. So the news has kind of marinated for a few days now, but it's been confirmed Bishop Strickland has been deflocked, as we've been saying. He has not been defrocked, but he's been deflocked. He no longer is the Bishop of Tyler, Texas. And some people celebrated this move. Some people are in dismay. We're just trying to give you a straight and answer of what we understand at this time and how maybe we should be thinking about it. So, Erica, if you go into the details of how he was removed.
We're not just trying to get to the facts, bro. I'm also dismayed, so whatever.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
This was a sucker punch. Like, I'm going to go through the details, but I just want to say, like, I wasn't surprised terribly, but when it actually happened and you read the headline, it was definitely a gut punch, no matter, what your thoughts are on Bishop Strickland. It was shocking. And here's why it was shocking, because on Saturday, we woke up to the news coming out of Rome that Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas, was being removed from his diocese. He had been asked to resign on November 9th. He had declined to resign because he said a bishop can't leave his flock, and he'd done nothing wrong. The Vatican issued this statement via Cardinal DiNardo and said that he was being removed. And so there was no reasoning given, which of course opened up the Catholic world to myriads of speculation on why he was being removed. And part of the issue is that there was no real judicial review here. There are very clear guidelines by which a bishop may be removed from his diocese. He can die, which obviously isn't the case here. He can ask to be removed. He can resign. Either he gets to a certain age or he has health issues, or he can be removed by canonical process, which the Pope himself in 2016 issued a motu proprio, kind of tightening up these canonical processes by which a bishop may be removed. And many of the parts of the process involve transparency about it needs to be a known violation of something canonical, egregious, financial, sexual, not that would ever happen with a bishop, right? But it has to be clear, and no reason was given for Strickland's removal. So we are left to our own thoughts on that.
And to give full context, he received an apostolic visit. I think everyone kind of remembers that. It was a couple months ago.
In June. Right.
And so after that apostolic visit, there was kind of speculation, is he going to be asked to resign? No one really knew at the time. And now it became clear he was asked to resign a few days ago. And then he now officially said, no, I'm not going to do it. The interesting context too is it's very unusual, at least in recent times, to actually have the Pope force someone to resign. He does have the power to do so. Too long, don't read. Yes, he actually does have supreme authority over church and all of its activities. But usually what happens is, and I think Pope John Paul II had a case of this, and Benedict had a case of this, they almost like, they put an auxiliary bishop in place.
Right,
or
Seattle,
they
right,
don't,
1986.
Yeah, right. Or they kind of wait it out. They're usually very, they're not as heavy-handed as, no, you're removed. And so now this is the second bishop that Pope Francis has done this to, correct?
It's the third. There was a bishop in Paraguay in 2014 and a bishop in Puerto Rico just 18 months ago in 2022. Very similar. They seem to be guys who kind of put their foot down against some directive coming out of Rome. And within a few months, they're asked to resign. They refuse to resign. And so they get the call from the nuncio to their country saying, you're out.
And there was no proof of any, monetary or sexual impropriety.
Not just no proof.
Puerto Rico.
Not only no proof, but no even accusation of impropriety.
Right.
That's the
I think in Puerto Rico,
shocker.
They were saying that he refused to sign a document that said that everyone needed to get vaccinated.
Yeah, the other bishops in Puerto Rico had signed out a letter, and he's like, yeah, no, I'm not signing that.
Right. He followed the Vatican directive, which is it's according to your conscience whether or not you should receive it. And then he mysteriously was not asked to, he was forced to resign. So this is not the first time this has happened under Pope Francis's tenure. There's been a lot of speculation as to why. Is there a document that people are pointing to or an action that Bishop Strickland has taken that would be like, oh, this is probably why?
Well, our friends on the Catholic left at like National Catholic Reporter, you can guess. They're pointing.
Threw a party over this.
There's a little bit of dancing on the grave. They are pointing to a speech that Bishop Strickland gave in Rome on October 31st, in which he quoted a letter from an anonymous friend. We don't know who it was, but he read from this letter. And in the letter, the friend is criticizing Pope Francis flirting with modernity, with the trans agenda, etc. And in the letter, the friend refers to Francis as a usurper, as he's taken the chair of Peter from the rightful pope. And the left is saying, well, Strickland obviously read this because it's what he thinks, it's what he intends. Even though, again, like I went back, I watched the speech that he gave. He's clearly quoting a letter. He even pauses after the sentence where the friend calls Francis a usurper. And he makes some kind of remark about, well, you got to figure that out for yourself. You're smart people. But at the same time, his other statements about the Pope have been to reiterate time and again that he believes Francis is the true Pope. He submits to Francis as the true Pope, and we should all be praying for Francis because he's a man under attack.
Well, I agree with a lot of what Bishop Strickland says on so many things. I think he's a great voice, and we love him. I do. I love his teachings and stuff like that. But when a bishop does something like that, where you're even calling into question whether or not the Bishop of Rome is the true Pope and stuff like that, it's not a surprise that the axe would come down a few months later. It's just not how it's going to go. But the point I get so frustrated at, I think so many Catholics do, is that it's just announced. There's no explanation. Like if the Pope had said, I feel like this bishop was trying to undermine the unity of the Catholic Church by attacking and dismissing the Holy Father, then so be it. Then say that, and because that seems obvious. That's what's really going on here. I mean, the speech you gave is Exhibit A on that. He also talked about, he's tweeted out messages talking about how the Pope Francis is undermining church teaching, which actually, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. There's
an argument for that.
But well, it's a pretty obvious argument. But the point is, if I'm a layman, so Pope Francis, I suppose, if you really wanted to do, is excommunicate me, but whatever. But if you're a bishop,
imagine Josh Mercer from the Loopcast getting excommunicated. The content that would come out of that, man.
Well, he sent out this thing on Strickland 15 minutes after we sent out the Loop, so that was like frustrating. So I hold grudges, but no, I mean, I just think I just want to make sure everyone's clear. I think Bishop Strickland is a wonderful voice. I agree with so much what he says, but I felt like, he was taking risks by calling out Francis in this way, and then it's not really that big of a surprise that he would drop the axe on him. But again, even that he removes him, why is it that like the Catholic left has been so big on the influence and the importance of the laity, and they talk about Vatican II and the laity and all that kind of stuff, right? And yet the laity are offered no explanation for why.
Yeah, so much for synodality.
Yeah. Oh, synodality, listening church. It sounds like a church that's saying, shut up. Here's our rule. We're getting rid of this guy because we don't like him, and we're not even going to say it.
Josh, I mean, that's one part of it. That's one part of it is the lack of transparency, of course. But then the other part of it is people that have been removed. There's an obvious, spot the difference here. Because people that are on the very progressive side of trying to change church teaching and trying to change the church itself, I mean, Father James Martin is kind of top of mind here. They get promoted. There's German bishops blessing people.
Not just Father James Martin, but you got like the bishops,
the entire German eparchy.
People inside the church.
Or the bishop in Argentina that's a friend of his, that he's that had a lot of improprieties, and Francis was like,
just come live in Rome near me. Yeah. And
right. So if anyone's questioning why people are upset and maybe are distrustful over this, well, there's just been a standard of punishing people who fall on one side of issues, and they're being rewarding to the other side of people on the issues. It's very obvious. I mean,
then you have that bishop. Remember,
here.
we were talking about 2 weeks ago, the artist bishop that was
Rupnik, right?
Rupnik, that was sexually abusing people.
He's a priest.
Yeah.
He's reincarnated in a diocese. Yeah.
Right.
His art is everywhere.
It's just like, it's one of those cases where you have a pope who is rewarding friends, even if they're horrible human beings, and punishing enemies, his enemies, but they're not really enemies of the church. Obviously, this case, we're talking about Bishop Strickland, but as I mentioned before, Archbishop Corleone, it's a pope, I think, is acting very petty. And here's the thing, like, if you're Pope Francis, we have to understand, like, what is the nature of what the papacy is here, right? The papacy is supposed to be an uninterrupted continuation of the previous, successors of Peter, right? And this papacy has not done that. It's been a rift right from the beginning, but most recently, so when Pope Benedict issued that motu proprio allowing for a flourishing of the Latin Mass, again, I don't even go to Latin Mass, but I have a lot of friends do it. I support it. Go for it. I'm sure Archbishop Cardinal Bergoglio, who is now our Pope Francis, I'm sure he thought this was a horrible idea at the time. Obviously, because 7 years later or whatever, he was Pope and he gets rid of it. But the thing is, you should have a respect for the office, because if you're so disrespectful of the previous occupant by just saying, oh yeah, what this one little thing that he did on the Latin Mass, I'm going to completely do the opposite of that. So you're just inviting the guy who comes after you to wipe the slate clean when you're there. And so
exactly.
Then what is the papacy? Is it really a center of unity? Are Catholics really supposed to respect it? And this is when I get
kind of reminds me of the presidency.
I know, executive orders, Catholic style.
And sometimes I get Catholics Catholics who support tradition, who tend to be more conservative in nature. They have I would say a larger than normal respect, because they respect tradition. They respect the men who get ordained to the priesthood and who get ordained to the becoming bishop, and so they have more deference, right, to the church and its hierarchy and all that stuff, right? Okay, so we have more deference, more respect, and this is how we're treated. And sometimes when someone gets upset by this, they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, Josh, you're not being respectful. You're not being respectful to the office." You know something? Pope Francis is not being respectful to the office. He's being dismissive of his immediate predecessor. He's being dismissive of the other successors to the apostles, like Bishop Strickland. If you think Bishop Strickland's acting a little off and being disrespectful and calling into question your authority as the Bishop of Rome, then talk to him, call him out.
Right, talk to him.
Call him out publicly, but do you remove him? What's the purpose of removing him? I just don't understand. Like, there's no canonical reason. It's not like he's incapacitated. It's not like he's done any financial or sexual scandal.
It's personal. It comes across as this is personal. And I think the other thing too, it's not only the nature of the papacy that we need to remember here, it's the office of bishop itself. The Pope is the first among brothers. He's the Bishop of Rome. But every bishop who is in charge of a diocese, who's given charge of a diocese, has his
apostolic authority.
Yes, exactly. Has apostolic authority from Christ himself over over the people he's been entrusted with. And I think, we've reading the Pillar, they have a couple guys in at the bishops' meeting this week, and they've been talking, and even bishops who have been critical of Strickland and don't like his style on Twitter or whatever, this is very disturbing even to them. And this is the talk at the bishops' conference, which is going on right now, is, this is a step so far. It sets a precedent that is not synodal. It is not fraternal.
Well, it's a shot across the bow.
Right.
It's a shot across the bow.
It's a warning.
They could be the next one, right? If the next pope gets in and they see that this is the standard and they have their bishops they don't like, gone. right? Like, and that's now a threat to every bishop now, if this is going to become the standard for how it's
Right.
treated.
So
How you're treated if you just don't like you.
right. It's like Pope Francis exercised the nuclear option here.
Yeah.
You know, like to use a crass political term, and that's the whole point. Like we're seeing the application of political tactics to a church, which is that's not how it's supposed to be. The church is Christ's bride, so we're not supposed to have, you know, scorched earth, smash mouth policies and tactics going on in our church. And I think that's a definite warning sign. We're having that in politics today. You know, nuke the filibuster. You know, forget every moray. And it's like Trump and Biden both were on this. I'm not trying to single any one of them out. Obama was probably the biggest aggressor of this in recent times, where you just it's scorched earth, smash mouth politics. You don't care what happens. All you care about is winning today, and you don't think about what kind of legacy you're handing off to the next generation, and what you're doing to the institution that you're expecting everyone just to revere, right? So if everyone's supposed to revere and respect the authority of the Catholic Church, and then you use these smash mouth tactics, then the next generation is going to be like, oh, well, it's all just a game.
It's all power plays, right?
It's all power play, all Machiavelli. Just get as many cookies as you can, like forget it. So then what is it suddenly really a mystical body of Christ? Is it really this, no.
Right. And I think that there's that deep sadness, like there's the anger. I totally had my angry moment, like flip the tables and all that. But I think as that fades, there's just this deep sadness to witness this kind of machination going on among those who should be our fathers in the faith, who should be spiritual fathers. And it's just, yeah, my takeaway is absolutely we need to pray and we need to do penance and fast and follow Bishop Strickland's own example right now, which is he still flew to Baltimore. He's not in the bishop's meeting because he said the nuncio told him not to come in, even though he could. But he's out there on the sidewalk praying a rosary. And really, there's that. But I think there's also Catholics need to arm themselves with a knowledge of the history of the church, that this is not an anomaly, because otherwise, you see people, well, that's it. I'm leaving the Catholic Church. I'm going to go into schism now with this guy because obviously Francis has destroyed the authority of the church here. No, he hasn't. And that would be the wrong reaction. But I think it's important to recognize, like, yeah, we're angry and we're sad because this isn't how you can see Christ sitting down.
Because it is a scandal and it is an abuse of his power.
Yeah, like how did Christ react when the apostles were like, who's the greatest among us? Who's going to sit next to the right hand of the Father? Me, no, me. And Jesus is like,
I want to get more into like how we should think and feel about this for sure. But one thing I do want to give Bishop Strickland a lot of credit on. He was one of the most vocal voices post McCarrick. And I know McCarrick's a really sore spot for a lot of Catholics because what he did was evil, immoral. And a shout out to Kevin Wells at Crisis. Yeah. He did a great job writing an article about his own experiences with abuse and things like that. But at a time where everyone was just kind of like, what's going on? The McCarrick fallout was horrible. He was in such a high position in the church. How did this happen? Bishop Strickland was the one that got up in front of brother bishops and said, how did he get promoted? How did it happen if we're really of one mind that the act of homosexuality is wrong and sinful? There seems to be questions about that. I think we have to face that directly. And that rocked the boat. And that probably, with a lot of Strickland's actions, it's kind of like, well, what do you expect? He criticized his boss and he got fired. But he probably understood that there was a pretty strong likelihood he was going to get fired.
Tom, you mentioned last time about the burgeoning generation of new priests are overwhelmingly much more faithful to church teachings, right? And that's a big difference from the priests that were ordained like 3 generations or 2 generations ago. It's of that crop that were the bishops in our country through the 80s and 90s.
Who shielded McCarrick and his ilk.
Yes, exactly. And I mean,
for years,
I like to think, if I had to pick a spot in time, back, it was right around 1990, 91, I forget, when the U.S. bishops, they had issued a document on racism in the late 70s. It was so vile. It's basically cribbing the critical race theory stuff now. That's probably where those guys got it from. It's horrible stuff. I thought their talk on nuclear war stuff, disarmament stuff was foolish throughout the 80s. And then you get to like 1990, just to take a spiritual aspect of it, that the U.S. bishops petitioned Rome for the removal of certain holy days of obligation and moving, Ascension to, so many places from Thursday to Sunday. And, you can't expect you to go to church on a Saturday on a holy day of obligation, so it won't be obligatory on Mondays and Saturday. All this kind of junk. That's, to me, the high water mark of just, foolish, liberalism in the church in the United States. And then, of course, as you were getting at, the scandals, like just shuffling around predators and all that kind of stuff. And, so many Catholics had no clue, and they couldn't imagine that so when it came to light, first with Boston, and then all throughout the first decade of this century, we find out that it's being repeated in Pittsburgh. I knew about it through my hometown in Minneapolis at the time. And I think the faithful have suffered so much. And then the scandal of McCarrick, that it was not just bishops shuffling priests around, it was a cardinal in our own church that was a molester himself. And I just feel like the faithful have been besieged so hard. And so Strickland standing up, as you say, at this meeting saying, we got to get with the program here. I think the number of bishops today in the United States who are more aligned, with traditional thinking has gone up. It's maybe a soft minority, but it's growing every day because you're finally starting to see this generation of, bishops be replaced. So I do feel like the tide's turning, but it is a long slog. It's making that way through the institutions. It takes a while.
It's a long slog, and it's caught the attention of Rome. And so we saw that the interview in America Magazine a couple of weeks ago from the papal nuncio, Cardinal Pierre, and he's like leaning into the U.S. bishops and the American church and saying things like they're reactionary, they're, just uptight, they're rigid.
Don't understand.
All the young priests in America want to wear cassocks. Like, there's no evangelization. There's no reaching out to the margins. And props to Archbishop Broglio, who stood up at the opening for the USCCB conference. Cardinal Pierre's in the room. He'd just given this other talk about like the Eucharist being accompaniment and perception and dynamism in the Eucharist. He didn't even say the Eucharist is the body of Jesus Christ. So it's just this like gibbly-gosh word salad about helping us give new life to the world. Archbishop Broglio got up and not directly, he congratulated Pierre on becoming a cardinal. And then he just went into, here's how the American church, here are the signs of hope. And he just went through all the points in that America interview and said, here's what bishops are doing. Here are these movements in the church. Here's focus. Here's net ministries. Here's, courage. He went through all of these initiatives. And is the church in America shrinking? Yes, mass attendance is way down after COVID. Bishop Brennan from Brooklyn, who we mentioned last week, he had a letter this week about the drop in mass. So is there a shrinkage? Yes. But are there signs of hope and vitality? Yes. And Broglio stood up to Cardinal Pierre and said, this is an unfair characterization of what's going on among Catholics in America. And I just wanted to give props to him.
Shout out to him. And then shout out to, we had someone in the YouTube comments say that he was an altar server for Bishop Brennan in Brooklyn.
No way.
And he said he was like one of the most upstanding men he's ever met. Like, oh man, shout out to that guy. It's kind of a cool tidbit to the whole Bishop Brennan saga over in Brooklyn. But 40% down. But if we could because I think the question everyone is hanging in their head, because Bishop Strickland meant a lot to a lot of Catholics. He was very influential and a great leader. And he's gone.
I love him.
He's gone now.
I love him.
Effectively.
Yeah.
So I think there's people that are tempted to be like, all right, well, do we need to leave the church?
This is exactly, and this is why that, as Erica mentioned, this letter from Bishop Brennan, it's pretty interesting. He put out this letter saying attendance at Mass over the last 8 years is down 5 years or whatever. It's down 40% in Brooklyn. And, it really gets to, it's like, which way do you want to go, church? Do you want to continue this pattern over the last 50, 60 years where you have not confronted the sexual revolution, but have tried to just plead neutrality, not talk about it, whistle past the graveyard? Has that worked for you?
Or worse. No, I just want to step in here, not just neutrality, Or worse, out of the Vatican last week, we have this Vatican trans memo about transsexuals can be godparents with totally adopting the language of the sexual revolution in a church teaching document. So not just neutrality. Sorry to jump in on you, but
no, it's just that I
go.
feel like our Heavenly Father has enormous patience, but after a while, he makes you decide. And the question facing the church right now is, does the Catholic Church need a serious infusion of the 21st century, or is it the other way around? Does the 21st century need a serious infusion of church teaching? That's the question that's facing us today, facing the synod, facing everything we do as Catholics today. Like, is church teaching wrong and society right, or is it the other way around? That's what we're getting at.
Do you want me to answer that?
Okay. Answer.
The church is right. Did I get it right?
Bam.
Did I get it raised, Josh?
Nailed it.
100%.
So quick bump before we get into the next section. We have the Receipts podcast, and maybe some of you have checked it out, but I can't encourage you enough. It's one of the coolest things I think we've done. Sweet voice actor, rosy, deep voice, but it's basically a podcast version of our investigative reporting on the church's response to COVID. So if you're wondering why your church shut down and why it acted the way that it did, we have some answers for you. It's very fascinating. It will be in the description here. Very well done. Go check it out. It's called The Receipts. So next section here, we move on to lifestyle. So this was sad, but a little bit of a positive ending, but kind of sad at the same time. But I think something a lot of people can relate to. So I'm referring to Baby Indi. So Dean and Claire Staniforth in the UK. They knew they had a baby, Indi, that had health complications before she was born, but decided to continue with the pregnancy. And this is even though doctors pressured them to have an abortion. So Indi was born in February and began experiencing health problems only a few hours after extreme seizures, needed to be resuscitated when she stopped breathing. So I don't know if this is just a UK thing, and Josh, maybe you have more information on this, but there was decisions being made because she was on a ventilator as to the court needed to get themselves involved and rule whether or not it was in the best interest of Indi to stay living, basically, to stay in this ventilator and keep living. And they basically ruled no eventually, but there was this long drawn out court battle. The Italian government said that they would extradite her and put her in a hospital and take care of her. They got refused that. Sad end of the story. She did pass away, but she was baptized and the parents were baptized. But I was just curious, I think there's examples of this elsewhere, but it just seemed to me so odd that the UK government felt they needed to be involved in this situation.
Yeah, well, this is the second time in 10 years that this has happened.
The British government owns healthcare.
Right.
So,
and they own your children.
So it is a socialized healthcare deal. This couldn't happen in America.
Well, not necessarily, but yeah, the healthcare system is owned by the government in England. And this does remind us of the case back in 2017 with Charlie Gard. So, in this case, as in, I think as well with Charlie Gard, the Italian government offered citizenship to the baby. So it's like, literally, it's an Italian citizen now. Let this baby Indi come to Rome and we'll try to help her out. Because Italy might have socialism, but there's still that reservoir, Xerox copy maybe of Catholicism, but where they're like, we want to help people who are hurting. That's kind of
well, the prime minister is pretty awesome, Georgia Meloni.
No, yeah, I know, but still,
Catholic. Yeah,
most of Italy is former Catholics now rather than Catholics, but there's still that kind of reservoir. Like, baby's dying, let's try to save it. Whereas in England, it's evidently not the case. It's just thought of as a drain on the treasury. So they try to give him citizenship, like fly him out, and the government's like, yeah, no, you don't get to take your baby. That's just like so bizarre to me. It's like literally just let us move the baby, and it's not a drain on your money. And someone over here wants to help him. Why won't you let him? It's just it's again because socialism is just a monstrous ideology, and they get so robotic with their ideology that they don't allow reality.
There's no humanity.
Circumstances like this to allow to make them question their
any
ideas.
Challenge to the system is just shut down, even if it costs a baby her life or costs parents the joy of holding their child as she's dying. And so, it's a monstrous story. But like you said, Tom, The bright side of it is that she was baptized, and really cool story there. The parents were not people of faith. They weren't baptized themselves or raised in the faith. But the dad, Dean, he witnessed afterwards that as he was going through this court battle for his daughter's life, for the right to take her out of the hospital, get her to Italy, and they lost, he felt like he was going through hell. And his reaction to that was, well, if hell exists, heaven must exist too. And if the devil exists, God exists too. And they decided to have her baptized. And apparently, he and his wife are now both preparing for baptism themselves as well. And so, Baby Indi died a saint. She's with God in heaven, we know, because of the sacrament, and a beautiful story in a way of God resurrecting even the most horrible situation for parents to be in. But, doesn't speak well for nationalized healthcare. Yeah.
No, for sure not. And even though, of course, sad ending of the story, somewhat hopeful, but sad ending of the story, as she was put on hospice and passed away, it was kind of a good reminder. I feel like we're so often embroiled in the abortion debate, but to see when parents do have a child, there's really, it's cliche, but there's nothing that a parent would not do for their own child. And I feel like the way that we talk about when you talk about like gene splicing or CRISPR, or if you get a ultrasound that's not even super accurate, but it says they could have Down syndrome, the thought even crosses people's mind like, oh yeah, you could abort the child, and that might be what's best. But I feel like once people like hold their baby in their hands, like the lengths that this guy literally tried to fight like the government,
Right.
like the entire government, to save his child. It's kind of, it was inspirational to me.
Can you imagine a scenario where, like, if you could start, I mean, obviously we'd love to get rid of abortion as an option altogether because it's savage and it's nasty. But imagine like every time a doctor had to give the prognosis that we suspect that your baby might have some congenital problem. And I think to myself, my son, 10 years ago, heart surgery when he's only 7 months old. So I think about these little ones. But like, oh, your kid might have Down syndrome. And before you can make a decision about whether or not you want to continue the pregnancy, as you said, I don't like that verbiage. You want to kill a baby? They should just grab a baby in the hospital and put it in the mom's arms. Go, okay, so we want to tell you, like literally have to hold the baby in your arms as you're like, yeah, dude, I'd totally abort the child that's in my belly. It's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, it's unspeakable. It's just
it is kind of sick how we've just basically normalized the separation of humanity from what is literally growing inside of you.
The only way we could do that, Tom, is through words, like,
Right. And it's been done. I mean, if you talk to people, they're trying to not even assign any type of life to the fetus. Yeah, it's a clump of cells. Like the fact that phrase exists. And to see like once someone holds their child, like it'd be insane for anyone to say like, oh yeah, I got to put it on hospice. Like it's not worth the money, or it's not worth the state's resources to keep my child alive. No one would say that. They'd do anything they possibly could to keep their kid alive.
Right.
Yeah. And I kind of love that sentiment, and like that sentiment that Mr. Gregory experienced, like led him to faith, which is like eternal life. So in a way, really sad, but I think there's some really oddly positive things in here.
It does speak to the fact that maybe the change that we need as a society is, we start talking about Ohio and the defeat that we had there. Really what we need to change is in the hearts, the hearts and minds of people. We need more people to have that transformation that this father had and this mother had.
Mm-hmm.
Because by the time it gets to the ballot, we've sort of already lost.
Yeah.
And there's a good article by Daniel McCarthy on this. And it's like, there's a lot of people who try to change the hearts and minds of people. But like, if you have 50 some years of headwinds that you're going up against, it's hard. So we as Catholics will often offer secular scientific rationales for, hey, it's actually its own life. It's separate DNA. And here's what happens. And that's why you shouldn't get an abortion. And I get it. But with this article by Daniel McCarthy, and shout out to my friend Barry Bruss, he's a dedicated looper. He sent it to me, and I totally agree with this article. It's like, ultimately, if we want to have a pro-life America, we're probably going to have to start changing hearts and minds away from this secular culture, where everything is crass and, if it's good for me, then great. And,
Well, and we're the
kind of
worst.
hedonism.
We're the worst evil. The worst that evil to befall anyone is suffering. That somehow, suffering is something that should be eradicated, which is the justification people use for aborting children with these conditions, saying, well, I don't want them to suffer. This is the loving thing to do, is to kill them. And I think even more than handing a baby to a woman who's just had a prenatal diagnosis, like having her and the dad meet a family who's raising a child with that condition. Like, how many people have actually spent time with a family blessed with a Down syndrome child? I mean, Down syndrome babies are endangered. 90% of them are aborted. And so, unfortunately, the opportunity to be with people who have this condition is dwindling. But to see that love and to see that in spite of being different and in spite of suffering they've endured, it's a life worth living that brings great joy.
Yeah, and I just think that, like, what Bishop Brennan of Brooklyn said, talking about the decline in how many people are going to church, and like he's with his father, is heartbroken that his child is dying and he can't even try to rescue it. But there's a current running through all of this, and it amounts to, if the church herself is not calling us to sainthood, not trying to inspire us to be better, and it's just going to Sunday Mass is just a church of nice, and let's talk about the gospel, and isn't that sweet? If you're not demanding more of us as our country and our culture are just being laid waste, then I think people are going to, and then, we shut down the churches for a while. And so, like, what is it about Catholicism that requires us to go to Mass on Sunday? That it's actually Jesus. Yes. Let's emphasize the Eucharist, which is what they're doing. I applaud that. But then take it to the next step and say, let's get back to basics. It's almost appealing when you look at, when people look today at how Muslims take their faith so seriously. They pray 5 times a day. They have a special rug carpet that they use, and they face east, and they have these rituals. Like, they have their, Ramadan where
It's
they're
a
fasting.
challenge. Yeah, it's challenging you.
They're calling themselves, their church is calling them to a higher standard. And yeah, we fall short or whatever, but we need to do more of that. We need to get back to basics. Again, it's not that you have to Latin Mass and all that stuff. I'm not saying that necessarily, but you need to inspire us and call us. It's like Braveheart,
I love
where Mel
Braveheart.
Gibson's character, William Wallace, just
Love
turns
those
to
blue
Robert
eyes.
the Bruce. He says, lead us. Lead us. That we need the inspiration. We want bishops who are true shepherds that will inspire us, that will lead us, that will call us to sainthood. And you know what? Just a little thing. If you really believe all this stuff, then maybe confession shouldn't be from 3 to 3:35 on a Saturday afternoon.
Preach it, brother.
Josh, you can take my life, but you can't take my freedom.
Yeah, don't be
dude,
Robert
just
the
fire me
Bruce,
up.
be William Wallace. That's like what we got to say.
Oh, dude, fire me up. I watch that like twice a week.
It's still not the best movie quote of all time, though.
What is?
What would you say that is?
Oh, wait, I totally fell for that. What is it?
I mean, it's the Gladiator, man.
Oh,
I think when he finally takes off the mask, the helmet, yeah, and he finds out, like, the Emperor's like, oh no, it's this guy, and Russell Crowe's character just turns right in front of the screen. And actually, I found out later that they did that such a close headshot because as he's wearing that helmet, the hair kept sticking up, and so he says, I look totally goofy, so that they had to do that. They had to get right in front of him.
Wait, what was the line again?
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the north, general of the Felix legions, and loyal servant to the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
That's a bar.
Great movie.
Or my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Second greatest line of all time.
So, speaking of, competition and bloodthirsty competition, we have the election
Good
update.
segue,
So,
Pogo. Very
thanks for not doing
impressive.
that.
You're getting good at that.
I mean, I don't know.
No.
Is the Republican primary contest really a gladiators? I mean, it's a circus, but is it really a gladiator
Nikki Haley wields a weapon, man.
Nikki Haley,
She's got her heels.
Haley wields a heel.
Are you
she
serious?
Said she's got her heels and she'd kill you with it. So.
I gotta say, it
Watch
feels
out.
more
it's
like
for fashion.
It feels like a season of The Apprentice. Who's going to be the running mate to Donald Trump?
No, this basically is a season of The Apprentice.
That was awesome, Josh.
This
Give the man a bonus, Brian.
Well, someone just got the classic line, "You're fired." Tim Scott has officially backed out of the race. It was so surprising that his own team was watching the TV during the announcement and did not know it was coming, which is kind of crazy to not relay that they're done. Maybe it's because he's so happy with his new girlfriend that he soft launched during the last debate.
No, it's actually kind of funny though. His campaign sent out one of these classic alerts, like, if I don't get support from you now, it may be it. And then literally 15 minutes later, he quits. Like, oh my gosh. I guess enough people didn't donate.
Well, last ditch effort.
I mean, I don't know how many people were surprised at this. He really had no support.
He was under 4%.
People liked him a lot. And actually, he had raised a lot of money and he had high approval ratings. We asked people, what do you think of all the candidates?
Yeah, that was weird.
Everyone liked Tim Scott.
They
Why?
liked him.
Because he's a nice guy. And he's no threat to your favorite candidate. So you're like, yeah, I like him, sure. But then if you ask DeSantis people, hey, what do you think of Nikki Haley? They get mad because she's carpet bombing Iowa with $10 million in ads against her. And if you ask,
she's a big fan of bombing.
Right. Oh my gosh. We put together this clip. Can you roll the tape now? This is so Nikki Haley. This is what she dreams about.
You're referring to the Bomb Iran song, correct?
Bomb, 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 Iran. Bomb, 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 Iran.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, very popular song in the 1960s, Beach Boys, Barbara Ann, and in the late 70s, someone cut a little, when the Ayatollah was doing all that stuff in Iran, they cut this little song, bomb, 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 Iran. It's pretty funny. The thing is, former presidential candidate John McCain actually used that actual line, kind of snarkily joking, but he said it when he's in some sort of town hall. He goes, bomb, 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 Iran. And everyone knew, that's what that guy wanted to do. John McCain wanted to bomb everywhere, every place, and so Nikki Haley's, she's right there with it. She's, I'm so aggressive. I've got, ammunition in my heels. Okay, be careful how you walk, I guess. That's kind of stupid, though.
Yeah, that was the oddest tweet I think I've ever read.
Mm-hmm.
And it really hurt my brain trying to figure it out. But Nikki Haley versus Vivek was kind of the story of the last debate. We have some internal debates as to how serious Vivek is as a candidate. I'm a big fan of the rhetoric. I think he actually doesn't sound like a robot and makes a lot of good points. Whether you could say about the fact that he voted for Obama last time, that's up to you. But he's kind of dismantling Nikki Haley.
If that's all he does, he's adding to this conversation.
He's definitely making it more
Nikki
interesting.
Haley,
absolutely.
Nikki Haley is reprehensible, I think.
He pointed out that her daughter was on TikTok and she's called him scum. He also called out a lot of her family corruption because they started their own military contract after she was military industrial company, basically like a
defense contractor kind of
defense
thing,
company,
right?
Defense contractor company. Right after she was with the UN and has made quite a lot of money during that. She was pretty broke right after the UN stint. He called her Hillary Clinton on steroids.
Well, I don't know if Nikki Haley suicided anybody, but I know what you mean.
Yikes.
No, but and I think, Nikki Haley's terrible. And the thing is, what she's doing.
Wait, you think you don't like her?
Yeah, no,
I'm
obviously
confused.
never Nikki here, but
Elaborate, Josh.
She's right now spending $10 million on ads in Iowa to try to, attacking DeSantis with the hopes that if he is, completely collapses in the polls, that she'll obviously get his supporters. But the fact is, no. I actually like Ron DeSantis. If I live in Iowa, I'd probably vote for him, right? Okay. And I'm putting my cards on the table, no sweat. But here's the thing. if it was a three-way race between Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Donald Trump, and DeSantis support started falling really fast, and it was like, okay, well, it's either going to be Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump wins my state. Like, well, I'm going to vote for Trump because he's my second best pick. So many candidates make the assumption that, oh, just like it's 2016, if I knock off everyone else and it's just me and Trump, then I'm going to get 55% because Trump's only at like 45%. I think that's a total misconception because there are a lot of people who support Vivek or DeSantis who their second pick is not Nikki Haley. And their second pick might not even be the other candidate. It might not be, Vivek's, if you support Vivek, your second pick might not be DeSantis. It might be Trump. Same thing with DeSantis. So the idea is, oh, Trump's got some sort of a ceiling. It's the same thing from 2016. That's not true. Like if all these other candidates fall out of the race and it's just you and Trump, that doesn't mean you're going to get every other voter that goes for you.
Yeah, Trump was so concerned about this race that he spent his time at the UFC and walked out to a Kid Rock song with Kid Rock, Dana White,
and Tucker Carlson.
And Tucker Carlson.
And the crowd went totally bananas. They loved it.
Fun fact, Kid Rock grew up like 2 towns over from me.
Oh, hey.
Local
I mean, some
legend.
of that rubbed off too.
Not a surprise.
Another Michigan boy, yeah. We have a lot of similarities, as you can tell. But yeah, he had a much better weekend than I think any of the other candidates did, and he's so far ahead of everyone in the polls. But that's not even the worst thing Nikki Haley has said recently. Josh, you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, no. So the most recent thing, again, you would think this, again, she was Hillary Clinton. She bashed people who are anonymous online and saying that it's a threat to national security. Now, this actually really torques me because, of course, we had under the Obama administration, we had our federal government cooperating with the FBI cooperating with Twitter to censor accounts, and you think to yourself, liberals, the vanguard of free speech.
Right.
I should be able to say anything, even if it offends you. And wait, you're working with the federal law enforcement agencies to stifle free speech? Can you imagine anything more vile? It's like barfing on Thomas Jefferson's grave. I mean, this is so insane.
Right.
It just blows my mind.
I saw someone tweet America was built on Anon accounts, basically. And it is kind of
Federalist
true.
Papers,
Common sense and Thomas
right?
Paine.
Yeah.
Nikki Haley would have hanged Thomas
Brutus.
Paine.
Yeah. I liked this one too.
Our country.
From Christina Pusha. She goes, more red flags than a CCP parade. When she saw the clip. Yeah.
So true.
No kidding.
So true. Christina Pusha is the spokeswoman for Ron DeSantis, and for whatever reason, the Wonder Boys at the DeSantis for president campaign put her, behind lock and key for 3 months, and they finally let her bust free, and she's amazing. So I can't, again, when they do an autopsy of that campaign, they'll be like, why did we stifle her for 3 months? That was stupid.
I mean, to be fair, though, she has had a tough time fending off a lot of the heels accusations on Ron DeSantis. And I have an internal source that did kind of confirm that he does wear some pumps, but it's all good. Which is kind of crazy because he's not even that short. But I'm a short king. You can just be short.
Did you wear heels at your wedding, Tom?
No heels. Yeah. But think about all amazing world leaders like Alexander the Great, short king. Napoleon, short
Define
king.
great leader.
He's 5'8", though.
Yeah.
James Madison,
short king.
father of the Constitution.
There's plenty of short kings in there.
They were all short kings back then, though, because no one had the nutrients to get above 5'7". Come on, man.
Are you saying I'm nutrient deficient?
What did you eat in your childhood, Pogo?
Look, I come from a long lineage of short kings, and we're doing just fine. It's all good, DeSantis. Twilight Zone, Josh.
This is the perfect Twilight Zone of all time. I mean, and it's hilarious, but infuriating together. So we have the Chinese dictator coming to San Francisco for APEC, which is the Asian Pacific Economic Conference, right? And we got all these CEOs and the leaders of all these countries coming to San Francisco for this conference. And Biden's going to be there, and he's going to meet with his boss, the Chinese president. And, he's got to do 10% to the big guy. So what's going on? Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, decides to send out the force. Boom. We talked about this for for a long time, we're not the only ones, for several years, the amount of defecation in the street that people, bums who just, and everyone just like, what? They'd never cleaned it up. It's just there, and needles and everything, and homeless taking over entire parks and everything. Well, not when the boss is coming to town, not when Chinese dictator Xi's coming to town. They roll in, they clean the streets, get all the fecal matter off the sidewalks, clean it all up. Here's the funny thing. They didn't break the bank. They had the money in the budget to do this. They just decided to do it. Why? Because the boss is coming into town. And so it was funny watching this Fox reporter, not Fox News reporter, literally just a Fox affiliate. They're asking people, what do you think about this? And one guy's like, this is baloney. Like, if you can do this now, why can't we have this all the time? Like, why does the Chinese dictator get to have clean streets and clean sidewalks in San Francisco, but the people who live here for, all year round, they don't deserve clean sidewalks? And this is, again, the elites. The elites in this country have a visceral hatred for everyday Americans. And that's why actually I thought Tucker Carlson's fun. We talked about this a few weeks ago, like architecture, like these big box stores and these big ugly concrete cements. It's all an attempt to tell the average person, you do not have dignity. Everything is ugly. So I think it's on purpose that our streets are nasty, ugly, full of crime and bums, and they don't do anything about it. Now, here's the problem. Now that you've done this, people are like, why can't we do this every day? So hopefully there'll be some
Josh,
changes.
Gavin Newsom answered your question.
Well, he gave the best possible answer you could give, right? I mean, you got a lot of people coming into town, a lot of, you want to clean up your house, when you got guests coming over. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, like a river of fecal matter on the sidewalk. I think you could take care of that anytime you wanted to. Like if we can land people on the moon, I think we can clean the sidewalks in San Francisco for the love of all that is holy.
Did we?
They did. They cleaned it
all I'm
up.
gonna say. We haven't been back.
Don't
Anyway,
go there.
before we get in that conversation, Erica.
All right.
Do you have?
We have been back. We
Plaza?
actually did a loop around the moon last May. Didn't you remember that?
Yeah. All right. We're not going to go there. This
I'd like to see
is
the
beyond our scope at LOOPcast.
The flag wasn't waving.
Totally beyond our scope.
Yep.
It doesn't
All right.
wave. It's a moon, you idiots.
My Twilight Zone is happy. This is great news. So Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and I'll tell you who she is in a minute, has announced that she is no longer an atheist, but she has converted to Christianity. And here's who Ayaan Hirsi Ali is and why it matters. So she is known for being a refugee from Somalia. She was the victim of extreme Islamic, the Muslim Brotherhood taking over her town. She escaped from that. She through a circuitous route. Great book is her memoir, Infidel. I would recommend anyone read it because to understand life inside the Islamic theocracy, there's no better insight. She's a great writer, speaker. She's become very influential. When she finally got out, she made it her way to the Netherlands, where she became a Dutch citizen. And those of you of my generation will probably remember Theo van Gogh. She collaborated with him on a film talking about women under Islam in Europe called Submission. He was murdered on the streets of Amsterdam. This is 2004. It was a while ago. And she went on to become kind of a spokesperson for the new atheism and the idea that enlightened humanism is going to save the world. She's a global speaker, well known. So when she dropped this news that she has converted to Christianity and she published an essay, which again, everyone should read. It is Why I Am Now a Christian. She's playing off of Bertrand Russell's famous essay, Why I Am Not a Christian. And she goes through this very thoughtful discussion of how she went from true believer in Islam, total atheist, enlightened humanism, to Christianity. And it's a beautiful testimony to that. So for me, I followed her pretty much my whole adult life. So it was a really, really big story. And she talks about how Christianity alone as a worldview is going to undergird basically the salvation of civilization, because only Judeo-Christian values allow for free conversation, for civic discourse. But then she goes, I just want to quote this. This is really cool. She goes, "Yet I would not be truthful if I attributed my embrace of Christianity solely to the realization that atheism is too weak and divisive a doctrine to fortify us against our menacing foes. And by that, she means socialism and Islam. She said, I have also turned to Christianity because I ultimately found life without any spiritual solace unendurable, indeed very, very nearly self-destructive. Atheism failed to answer a simple question: what is the meaning and purpose of life? And again, I would encourage everyone to go read her book, Infidel, and her essay, Why I Am Now a Christian. It was really big news globally. She also gave she was on a wonderful panel at the art conference that Jordan Peterson, I wish Jordan Peterson had just shut up and let her talk, but she gave some great points about sort of these bigger themes that we talk about here on Loopcast. So welcome home to Ali, and great news. Go check out all the links I'm going to drop for you.
It's awesome. Can I make a humble request for two?
Yeah.
All right. First one, Megan Rapinoe. Her career ended.
All right, bring it on. You can definitely have two.
So Megan Rapinoe, long and successful, decorated career as a soccer player representing our country, and yet she still remains unbelievably unlikable and off-putting. I don't know how she does it. She suffered a non-contact injury in the beginning of the championship game for, I think, there's a women's soccer league, a professional women's soccer league in America I just learned about. But she said that this injury was proof that there isn't a God, as her and her partner were kind of giggling at the table about it. Said it's just effed up. Can't believe it's just effed up. And that just kind of took me back into her past. Like, I don't understand how she managed to be so unlikable. Maybe it was kneeling during the national anthem and then keeping that going. And then when she was told to not kneel anymore, she said she'd never sing the national anthem again and kept her hands behind her back, all while representing the country. Maybe Classy. It was the embarrassing loss to Sweden. Could have been the fact that she supports transgender athletes to join her team, which is insane.
Again, she's so unlikable that millions of Americans who don't care about soccer were watching soccer and cheering against their own country's team. Yeah. That's how unlikable she is. I mean, she's right up there with pestilence. I mean, people cannot stand her.
And I just don't know if she doesn't understand why she's not unlikable, or why she's not likable, or she just has leaned into kind of being a villain. I mean, she's been big on equal pay, all these different things, but it's kind of sad. It's sad on multiple levels, but it's sad because she could have just been grateful and humble and appreciated the opportunities that she'd been given through her God-given talent. And she'd be a 2-time world champion soccer player. Like, she's won 2 gold medals for the U.S. She's had a long and historic career for a female soccer player. And she just chooses to be bitter the whole time. This is just like such a feather in the cap. So I watched that, and nothing made it feel more Twilight than going over to the National Football League, where, I mean, hate to get in these conversations, but, thousands upon thousands of eyes are watching the Bengals play the Texans. And there's this rookie quarterback, CJ Stroud. He was drafted out of Ohio State with high expectations, but it's always a little bit hard to be a rookie quarterback. It's just usually rookie quarterbacks don't do very well. And he beats the Bengals. He throws for 356 yards. He's being lauded as rookie of the year. I mean, just it's second win in a row. Very impressive. No one thought the Texans would do anything this year. And he gets to his press conference, and the first thing he says is, I'm just really grateful to be here. God has been so good to me, and I'm not worthy of his mercy, but he gives it to me anyway, and I love him for that. And I'm so grateful for these opportunities and my teammates. And I feel like he's really prepared me to be in these situations, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm like, how could you not love this guy? Like, if everyone just took notes on that, you didn't even have to go into the theology, which I think is like beautiful that he's choosing to use this platform to glorify God, of course. But like, being humble and working with your teammates and praising others, like, that's the way to get ahead, not only with your team, but then like to leave a legacy of people that like you and like admire you and think of you in a positive light. And it's just sad that like Megan Rapinoe couldn't take that advice earlier in her career. And so she'll forever be this stain on women's U.S. soccer when there's so many other positive stories there. And with CJ Stroud, it's like, what a amazing start to a beautiful, young career. Hopefully goes on to do amazing things and like continue to glorify God with his gifts and talents. And just, I've never seen it articulated so well from a rookie like that. I know Tim Tebow was like mega viral for being, you know, a young
Harrison
pastor,
Butker. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, Butker's out there. There's like these great examples, but CJ Stroud, man, just like blew me away. I was like,
I think Megan Rapinoe is a case where she inhaled, breathed, and embodied like a toxic ideology where, you know, the patriarchy and men are the source of all problems in the world. And she just, you know, spits venom at every turn. It's like, gosh, this is working out for you. Okay, I guess. Seems just bizarre.
But it's all in spite of all the opportunities that she's been given and all the gifts that she's been given. Like it's her mindset is so negative and vicious when she could just change her mindset and her life would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. She would be happier. Confirmed. She wouldn't be mad all the time about
like
all
you're
the
the
things
queen
going
of
wrong.
soccer. You're amazing. Like, why are you so angry?
It was really, yeah, it's sad. But shout out to CJ. Speaking of angry people, I had to throw this in. We've got fights going on in the U.S. Senate.
Oh my
I don't know if
gosh,
you guys
I
are
know.
aware of this, but a representative from Oklahoma almost fought a union boss in a hearing, and the person to stop was Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders had to be like, "Hey guys, like calm it down." The guy basically was like reading off. I think it was a document that the Teamster wrote. Like, this guy's a fraud. He never started his own business. Like, don't listen to anything he says.
Yeah, he's calling out the Oklahoma senator. Yeah,
the Oklahoma senator, and he just reads off all the smack talk that this guy's done about him. He's like, "You said anytime, any place. Here's a time. Here's a place. Do you want to go right now?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, stand up." And they cut the camera to the Teamster, and he's pretty beefy as well. Like, these are two big guys, and I'm like, we might have another like Senator Sumter beating with the cane situation, and Sumner, and I'd almost be okay with that. Like, I think that if men just settled their beefs like that, we'd be in a better place. Like, people would be less petty.
So you're going to bring back duels.
Just so our audience is clear, we're not like, yay, violence. We're saying there's a disparity right now where, you know, we had for many generations this notion of civility, and then now people are talking smack left and right, like, you know, like it has no consequence. And so,
there's consequence, baby.
Now, what this senator from Oklahoma is doing is like, hey, put up or shut up. Like, you're talking smack. Yeah, right. Like, let's go. And I respect that part of it.
And then apparently Kevin McCarthy threw a shiver at a representative from Tennessee.
The one of the 12 that voted against him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's getting interviewed about it. He said he's walking down the hall, and all of a sudden he got an elbow to the kidney. He's like, "Yep, clear kidney shot." And I looked in shock, like, who just hit me? And it was Kevin McCarthy.
Unbelievable.
And then he's like, Kevin McCarthy, this is honestly, I truly believe we could solve our debt crisis by doing pay-per-views for boxing matches between political opponents.
I'm here for that.
Because the smack talk was so good from this guy from Tennessee. He's like, look, Kevin McCarthy's the type of kid where when he was a kid, he would throw a rock into a window and run and hide behind his mama's skirt. Like, he has no integrity. He can't look me in the eye. Like, this is shaping up to be a throwdown. Like, welcome to the Thunderdome, baby.
Well, and then Kevin McCarthy denied it, and he goes, "If I'd hit him in the kidney, he would have been on the floor." It was just like back and forth. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys!
It's so awesome.
Again, it's
short tempers.
Actually, an improvement from this kind of malarkey that we've had for decades.
Yeah, this pretense at civility.
All these pretenses. It's like, you know,
because that wasn't the reality. Like I mentioned with Sumner,
because they absolutely hated each other
in the Senate. Yeah, like,
because words
it's
matter.
almost like people have to pretend like they don't hate each other now for some reason, but it's almost refreshing to hear a little bit of honesty. Like, yeah, I hate you. You didn't vote
and
for
we can't
if you want to convince us it's not a uniparty, this is the way to do it.
And we can't manage to fire them. Like, they just keep getting reelected. So come on, guys. Like,
yeah, I was talking, this is kind of like the Senate is suffering from, I think, what the NBA suffers from now. Like, everyone in the NBA is buddy. They all know they're getting fat contracts. So there's no actual rivalries or like tension at all anymore. They're all kind of friends. And I think back to like the 90s, like Bad Boy Pistons.
I'm watching Last Dance right now with Michael Jordan and the Bulls and like that.
So my father, I grew up in the Detroit area. My father refuses to watch The Last Dance because he hates Michael Jordan that much. He's like, why would I sit and watch hours of Michael Jordan? I hate him. I'm like, Dad, I respect that so much.
Isaiah Thomas guy.
Of course, Isaiah Thomas guy is like, this was back at a time where people hated each other. And the games were so much better. Like the Pistons and the Bulls
that was
throwdowns,
magic, dude.
Were unbelievable. I go back and watch highlights like all the time, because that's back when basketball, it meant something. There was like actual hatred. So we need to get back to that with the Senate. I think the NBA should take some notes from the 90s Pistons. I think we'd have some good representatives.
We just don't want Dennis Rodman.
We're going to get so much mailbag about this.
We have Dennis Rodman. Dude, the lady from Connecticut, your representative, looks like Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, sorry about it. Rosa DeLauro.
Rosa DeLauro and Dennis Rodman have a lot of similarities, is all I got to say.
We're going to get so much mailbag about this. You know this, right? They're going to be like, violence in the Senate.
Look,
condoning.
We're gonna get good mailbags from people that were fans of the Pistons and believe Isaiah Thomas was snubbed from the Dream Team.
You do got to think that
he was.
Bill Lambier would be a better senator from Michigan than any of the two yahoos we have now. So
yeah, Bill Lambier would be throwing elbows. He would be the one throwing kidney shots because he did throw kidney shots,
and they would be on the floor.
I'm gonna do it, Josh, in the spirit of I've taken 2 off. Someone left a cool one. Here we go. Oh, someone said they liked your background the best, by the way. Shout out to her.
Oh, so Erica.
Josh, you're in the clear.
No, Josh, they like your background. Yeah. You're so studious.
They like your background.
You've clearly read the most books.
So we have, I've been enjoying the LOOPcast. It's a great way to stay up to date with what's going on in the Catholic world. Josh, Eric, and Tom offer insightful and varied perspectives while remaining upbeat. Boy, is he going to love that section about the Bad Boys Pistons. The Twilight Zone is aptly named. Shout out to Wild About Elephants, left a review on Apple Podcasts. So if you'd like to join, maybe get a read on the episode, you can go to Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, 5 stars, write it personal. You can hit the inbox, loopcast@catholicvote.org. Another update, we have a new YouTube channel, so it's just going to be Loopcast content there. So go ahead and follow that. This will be posted on that now. And we appreciate you guys so much. We pray to St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us. And we will see you on the next episode. Bye, guys.